They say trouble has a way of finding you. That morning, it found me in the form of her smile. I was stacking boxes in the cramped office supply room, trying to keep my thoughts from drifting, when the door creaked open. Grace leaned against the frame, arms crossed, hair catching the sunlight in a way that made the dust motes around her look alive. "Your trouble," she said, and there was a flicker in her eyes, mischief, maybe curiosity. "And I like trouble." I froze, halfway through lifting a box too heavy for my muscles, and probably too heavy for my courage. I tried to respond, but the words came out wrong. I don't think I swallowed, caught in the way she looked at me, as if she could see every corner of my mind I didn't even know I had. Grace was in her mid-40s, but there was something timeless about her. A quiet confidence that made the world shrink to the space she occupied. Every movement was precise, deliberate, but relaxed in a way that made me clumsy by comparison. And yet, she leaned a little closer, enough that I noticed the faint scent of her perfume, something soft, floral, almost like the library after rain. My throat went dry. I cleared my voice, shifting the box in my hands. "I'm usually troubled that nobody notices," I said, half joking, half hoping she wouldn't see the tremor in my fingers. Grace tilted her head. The corner of her mouth lifted, just slightly, and I felt that old, dangerous pull, the one that makes you want to step closer even when you know you shouldn't. She wasn't supposed to be noticing me, at least not like this. I was her boss's kid brother's new assistant, a 20-something who barely knew which files went where. And yet here she was, leaning casually in the doorway, watching me like I was a puzzle she wanted to solve. There was a pause. The kind that stretches longer than it should, filled with unspoken questions. I wanted to ask her something, anything, but my words caught in my throat. Instead, I moved the box a little closer to the shelf, pretending to be busy. She didn't move. She just watched. And in that quiet, I realized I wanted her to. Then she stepped in, brushing past me in a way that made our shoulders graze. It was brief, almost accidental, but enough to make my pulse spike. "Careful," she said softly, almost a whisper, almost teasing. "You might hurt yourself." I laughed nervously, trying to mask the way my chest had gone tight. "I've got it under control," I said, but I wasn't sure I did. "Not really." Grace smiled again, a flash of warmth that felt dangerous and inviting all at once. She glanced at the window, then back at me. "You're not like the others," she said, almost to herself. Then, before I could respond, she tilted her head as if listening for something I couldn't hear. And that's when it happened, a sharp, unexpected buzz from my phone on the desk. I glanced down. A text. From someone I wasn't ready to see. My eyes flicked back to her, and for a heartbeat, we held the same space, tension crackling like static. She raised an eyebrow, that same teasing light in her eyes. "Well?" she said. "Are you going to tell me what's wrong, or am I supposed to guess?" I didn't answer. Not yet. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want the moment to end. And maybe I didn't want her to leave either. The doorbell rang somewhere down the hall. Sharp. Insistent. And just like that, the quiet room felt too small, our proximity too charged, and the world outside too dangerous. I didn't move from the supply room for a long moment after the doorbell rang. Grace had stepped back slightly, but not far enough to break the tension. My phone buzzed again, a reminder of a world I wanted to forget, if only for a few minutes. She leaned against the counter, arms folded, watching me fumble with the device. "You always look like you're expecting trouble," she said, but her tone wasn't teasing this time, softer, almost reflective. I wanted to tell her the truth, that trouble had been a constant companion ever since my last attempt at love crashed and burned. That I'd spent years convincing myself I wasn't worth being noticed, let alone desired. Instead, I shrugged, looking down at the unread text. "I guess I'm used to it," I muttered. Grace tilted her head, her eyes narrowing just enough to pierce through my half-lies. "Used to being overlooked, or used to making mistakes?" I flinched. Nobody ever asked me that. Not like she did. And yet I couldn't answer. Not with words, anyway. So I just shrugged again, feeling my ears heat up. She noticed. Of course she noticed. There was a quiet that settled between us, heavier this time, filled with the weight of all the things we weren't saying. I stole a glance at her, at the faint lines near her eyes that hinted at laughter and worry alike, at the way her hair fell just past her shoulders, perfectly imperfect. My chest tightened. Grace had her own stories, I could tell. The subtle tension in the way she shifted her weight, the half-smile that seemed to hide a past full of what-ifs. She wasn't naive, she'd loved, she'd lost, she'd carried ghosts that didn't fade. And maybe that was what drew me in. Not just the smile or the warmth, but the quiet strength that had survived mistakes I couldn't even imagine. I remembered the stories I'd heard from coworkers, whispers about her carefully guarded heart, about how she'd been burned once and learned not to let anyone too close. That was probably why her eyes lingered on me longer than they should, why her smile had something dangerous beneath it. And yet here we were. In a room too small, surrounded by office supplies, feeling like the world outside had paused. Grace leaned forward slightly, and for the briefest second, our fingers brushed when she reached for a box. My stomach twisted. Neither of us pulled away. My mind raced. This was dangerous. Taboo, even. She was my boss's older sister. The age difference alone made every thought feel illicit, every glance like it was carrying too much weight. But then she did something unexpected. She laughed softly, almost to herself, and said, "You remind me of someone I knew a long time ago. Always rushing, always worried about what might go wrong." I blinked, caught off guard. "Really?" I asked, and there was a tremor in my voice I couldn't hide. She nodded, her eyes softening. "Yeah, but somehow, I think you do better than he did." I didn't know whether it was the words, the tone, or the warmth in her gaze, but I felt a crack in my defenses. For the first time in a long time, I wanted to trust someone, her. Not fully, not yet, but enough to let the thought linger. And then, without thinking, my hand brushed hers again, just for a heartbeat, and neither of us moved away. Silence settled over us, thick and electric, the kind of silence that says more than words ever could. The doorbell rang again, faint this time, somewhere distant. We didn't hear it. The hum of the office printer was the only sound, and yet it felt deafening. I had been stacking papers in silence, trying not to look at Grace, trying not to let my thoughts wander to the way her hand had lingered near mine. But she didn't leave. She didn't even seem to notice my desperate attempt at composure. Instead, she leaned against the desk, arms crossed, eyes watching me like a cat that already knew how the story ended. I wanted to step back, to remind myself why this was a bad idea. She was my boss's sister. Older. Experienced. Probably untouchable. And yet I couldn't move. Not when she tilted her head and smiled that same dangerous, knowing smile. The silence broke when my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a message, it was my roommate calling, reminding me about dinner. I ignored it, but the vibration made my hands shake slightly. Grace noticed. Of course she noticed. "You're tense," she said softly. Her voice had that teasing lilt, but underneath, I caught a note of concern. "What's wrong?" I laughed nervously. "Nothing." But my voice cracked. I could feel my pulse in my throat. "Nothing?" she echoed. Her eyes softened, and for a moment, I saw something like regret flicker there. Something she wasn't ready to name. We were inches apart now. I could smell her perfume again, feel the warmth radiating off her skin. My hands twitched, wanting to brush her hair back, to reach for her, to... I didn't know. And then the office door clicked. My heart slammed against my ribs. I froze. Grace stiffened. Through the glass panel, I could see my boss, her brother, walking toward us with a stack of folders. The room felt impossibly small, air thick with everything we weren't supposed to be feeling. Grace's hand brushed mine again, accidental, I told myself. But her gaze held mine, steady, unyielding, as if daring me to move closer despite the risk. "I should go," she whispered, almost inaudibly. Her hand lingered a second longer, then she stepped back, smoothing her blouse like it had never happened. I wanted to stop her. Wanted to tell her not to leave. But my voice betrayed me. "Grace, wait." She shook her head, lips pressed in a line that said she was trying to be responsible, trying to pull away. But her eyes didn't lie. They burned with the same mix of desire and fear I felt. The office door swung open. My boss's voice called out from the hallway, oblivious to the storm inside the supply room. Grace straightened, her usual calm mask slipping back into place, but the tension didn't fade. It was still there, lingering in the space between us like smoke. I watched her go, her silhouette framed in the doorway. My hands were shaking, my chest tight, and I felt the ache of wanting someone I shouldn't. Wanting someone I probably couldn't have. And yet, even as the door closed behind her, I knew it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew the next time we were alone, something would break. Something we couldn't ignore. And when that moment came, I didn't know if I didn't sleep that night. Every time my eyes closed, I saw her leaning against the desk, that impossible smile teasing me, daring me to break the rules. I hated myself for it, for wanting her, for remembering the brush of her hand, for imagining what it would be like if she stayed close instead of stepping away. Morning came, gray and humid, and I found her already in the office lounge, coffee in hand. She looked up, caught me staring, and smiled, the kind of smile that made the walls of the room shrink and the air feel thick. My stomach twisted. "I didn't think you'd be up this early," she said. Her tone was casual, but the tremor in her fingers as she lifted the cup betrayed her. Or maybe it betrayed me. "I had things to do," I muttered. My voice sounded small even to me. She tilted her head, studying me as though she could read everything I wasn't saying. "You've been distracted," she said slowly, almost a warning. I flushed, looked away. I wanted to tell her that the distraction was her, that every thought, every heartbeat, seemed to revolve around her. But I couldn't. I couldn't admit how much danger I was putting myself in just by existing in the same room. And then it happened. A new intern walked in, dropping a pile of papers near our table. Grace's hand brushed mine, deliberate this time, I realized too late, as she reached to pick something up. My pulse spiked. The intern's awkward glance in our direction made me hyper-aware of the taboo, her, older, untouchable, and me, younger, reckless, standing on the edge of something I shouldn't be. I wanted to pull away. I knew I should. But I couldn't. Not when her fingers lingered on mine a moment too long, not when her eyes met mine across the room, silently daring me to lean closer. "You've got something on your mind," she said softly, voice low, almost intimate. I swallowed hard. "You think I don't notice you watching me?" I whispered, the words escaping before I could stop them. My chest ached, raw and exposed. Her lips twitched, the hint of a smile, then something sharper, longing, frustration, fear. "Maybe I am," she admitted. "But this is dangerous. You know that, right?" I nodded, knowing she was right. My hands itched to grab her, to hold her close, to ignore the consequences. My mind screamed to stop, but my heart betrayed me. A silence stretched between us, heavy and electric. Every movement, every flicker of her eyes, every shallow breath seemed amplified. I could feel the pull, the irresistible gravity of her presence, of everything we weren't supposed to give into. And then the intern cleared his throat awkwardly. Both of us froze, the spell broken. Grace pulled her hand back, brushing her hair behind her shoulder as if nothing had happened. But I saw it, the lingering heat, the tension in her posture, the unspoken confession hanging between us. We weren't safe. We weren't supposed to want each other like this. But neither of us could look away. She opened her mouth, like she was going to say something, and I leaned forward, heart hammering, waiting for the words that might change everything. And then, the door opened behind her. I didn't even hear the phone ring until it was too late. Grace had stepped away for a moment, leaving the lounge quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. I felt bold, reckless even, reaching for my own cup of coffee to steady my shaking hands, replaying the last few moments in my head. And then it rang again, that same insistent buzz. I answered without thinking. Alex? Did you see her? It was my roommate, panicked, voice tight. I didn't mean to. Someone saw you too. What do you mean? I asked, confusion and rising panic knotting my stomach. They saw you, he said, fumbling for words. In the lounge, with her hand, your hand. It's all over the office group chat. People are talking. Grace's brother might find out. My chest went cold. Every pulse felt like ice. I couldn't breathe. I tried to imagine how she'd react. Grace, poised and careful, now unknowingly caught in a storm we weren't ready for. By the time she returned carrying a stack of files, I could barely look at her. Her eyes narrowed instantly, scanning my face, reading something I wasn't prepared to admit. You've seen it? She asked softly, almost incredulous, and her voice carried that subtle tremor of betrayal that cut deeper than any words could. I stammered, shaking my head. It's my roommate. He sent me a screenshot. I didn't. Grace dropped the files onto the counter, eyes wide. Her fingers lingered on the edge as if she needed the support to stay upright. The warmth I had craved, the pull that had been building between us, now felt like fire on dry wood. Dangerous, inevitable. I can't believe this, she whispered, voice breaking. Her lips pressed together, eyes darting away for a fraction of a second before locking back on mine. Did you want this? Or is it just trouble following you? Her words hit me like a blow. I wanted to tell her I hadn't asked for it, that I didn't know how to stop feeling like this. But that would be a lie. I wanted it. I wanted her, and the thought of her anger, disappointment, or even judgment didn't stop me from feeling the pull toward her. She turned, pacing a little, the tension radiating from her in waves. If anyone finds out, my brother, my colleagues, everything we've been careful about, it'll ruin everything, she said, voice low, urgent. I stepped closer, heart hammering. Grace, I don't care about any of that. Not right now. My words faltered. My hands twitched, wanting to reach for her, to hold her close, to fix this with nothing but proximity. Her shoulders stiffened, like she was fighting something internal, some boundary she wasn't ready to cross. But the heat in her gaze betrayed her resolve. Desire, fear, longing, all tangled together, dangerous and beautiful. And then, without warning, she froze mid-step, eyes wide, listening. Somewhere down the hall, voices had raised. My boss's brother, probably checking something, footsteps echoing closer. Grace's fingers brushed mine again, light, unintentional, yet electric, and for a heartbeat, the world shrank to just that. We weren't safe anymore. Not from the office, not from our own feelings, not from the consequences we had been ignoring. And yet I couldn't move. I couldn't stop looking at her. And I knew, either could she. The office was empty, save for the hum of the fluorescent lights and the faint shuffle of papers from the night cleaners. Grace leaned against the desk, arms crossed, jaw tight. I could see the storm behind her eyes, desire, fear, anger, and something softer, hidden beneath layers of control. I stepped closer, unsure if I should, but unable to stop. Grace, I said quietly, voice low. We can't keep pretending we're not, whatever this is. Her breath hitched. She looked at me, every carefully maintained wall falling apart in the way her eyes shimmered. Alex, you don't understand. It's not just about us. There's my brother, the office, everything. This, she gestured between us, this could ruin everything I've worked for. I don't care about the rules. I whispered, voice tight. I can't pretend I don't feel it. Don't you feel it too? Her lips parted, but no words came. Only silence, heavy and thick, punctuated by the distant hum of the hallway. I do, she admitted finally, barely audible. Her fingers twitched at her sides, brushing the edge of the desk. But admitting it, it's dangerous. And I'm not supposed to want this. My chest tightened. Dangerous or not, I had been waiting for her to say it. To confess. To let me see the truth behind her calm, poised mask. Then let's stop pretending, I said, stepping closer. Let's stop hiding from it. We'll deal with everything else later. Just, right now. She blinked, hesitating, lips trembling, and I could see the war inside her. Every muscle tensed and relaxed in waves, like she was trying to pull away but couldn't. Her hand brushed mine, deliberate this time, and she didn't pull away. My heart thundered. Alex, she whispered. I'm here, I said softly, letting my hand rest near hers, just close enough to feel her warmth. The air between us was charged, heavy, impossible. She took a small, tentative step forward, and then another. Her eyes searched mine, asking questions she couldn't speak aloud. Desire, fear, regret, longing, all tangled in the curve of her shoulders, the tilt of her chin. And then she stopped. Her hand hovered near mine, trembling slightly. If we do this, she said, voice breaking, there's no going back. Are you ready for that? I swallowed hard, heart pounding. I don't care, I said, truth in every syllable. I want you. Her breath hitched again. She leaned in, just inches from me, and the world shrank to the space between us. My pulse raced, every nerve alive, every thought reduced to one clear, unrelenting truth. I didn't want to be anywhere else. Then, the hallway lights flickered. A faint noise, maybe a door closing, maybe a cleaning cart, made her jump slightly. Her eyes flicked toward the sound, a flash of hesitation, of responsibility, of all the risks we hadn't yet counted. She looked back at me, hand still near mine, lips parted, eyes wide. For a heartbeat, it was just us. Then the moment froze. And the world outside that space waited. The office had emptied long ago, leaving only the quiet hum of the night lights and the faint smell of coffee lingering on the counter. Grace and I stood in the same space where everything had started, hands almost touching, hearts still racing from what we hadn't said and what we had admitted. She let out a breath I didn't realize she'd been holding. I shouldn't, she whispered, voice fragile. I shouldn't, but I can't stop thinking about you. I stepped closer, careful not to overwhelm her, but unable to resist the pull that had been building for weeks, months even. Then don't stop, I said softly. Not now. Not ever. Her lips curved into that smile, dangerous, tender, real, and for the first time, it wasn't teasing. It was honest. Vulnerable. Human. And my chest ached in the best possible way. We didn't rush, didn't force the moment. Instead, we let the silence between us stretch, heavy with everything unspoken, and then gradually, naturally, her hand found mine. Fingers intertwined, and the small gesture carried all the weight of fear, longing, and hope. I've been trying to be responsible, she said, voice low, almost breaking. Trying not to let this happen. But I can't pretend anymore. I don't want to. You don't have to, I whispered, brushing my thumb across the back of her hand. We'll figure out everything else later. Together. She looked up at me, eyes glimmering with unshed tears and something warmer. Trust, acceptance, maybe even love. The office, the rules, the consequences, they didn't disappear, but in that moment, none of that mattered. We moved closer, the space between us shrinking until it was almost non-existent. And then, almost without thinking, almost as if the universe had paused to give us this one gift, our foreheads touched. Just a brush, a connection, but enough to make me feel her warmth in every nerve ending. No words were needed. None could capture the mix of relief, desire, and raw honesty pulsing between us. For the first time, we weren't hiding from our feelings. We weren't pretending. We were simply here. Grace laughed softly, shaky but genuine. We're trouble, aren't we? She said. I grinned, heart still hammering. Yeah, I admitted. But the good kind. And just like that, the tension eased, replaced by something fragile and powerful, a promise without words, a beginning without guarantees. Whatever came next, rumors, consequences, doubts, we would face it together. The office felt smaller, warmer, somehow safer. And in the quiet, I realized that maybe this was the first time in a long time that either of us had felt truly seen, truly understood, and truly alive. She squeezed my hand, and I returned it, letting the connection speak for everything we couldn't yet say aloud. And as we finally walked out of the office together, side by side, the night felt full of possibilities, uncharted but ours. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?